Good evening, peoples.
Hi, Greg.
Hello, Jason.
Howdy.
Davis.
Made it.
Good evening.
Still wearing a coat and tie at home. That's pretty cool.
I've got Bermuda shorts on if you'd like to see.
Sure you do.
Ooh, Jason's got a collar.
Or your colleagues, Greg.
It's just me tonight, I guess. It'll be a short meeting if they, if two.
Form of one. I guess it'll be information only.
Well, we could do that. Hiya, Chief.
Hi, Greg. Mr. President, rather.
Greg's fine. I'm not that fussy about titles.
Not here, sir.
We're not in a full formal meeting, so
Okay. Yep, you're right.
it's all good. Hi, Jason. Daniel, hello.
Evening.
Hi, Megan. Hi, Terry.
Hello.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hey, Bill.
Hello, team.
Hey, Bill.
Jason.
Hi, John. How you doing?
Good evening.
Evening.
Good evening.
Two-minute warning. Charles, how you doing this evening?
I'm well. How are you, sir?
Doing great, thank you. All right, I got 6 o'clock. We have 4 members present and staff. I'd like to begin the May 13th CSD regular board meeting. And we'll start with a roll call. Attendance, please, Ms. McEwen.
Okay, Director Grace,
Present.
Director Jensen,
Here.
Director Quinn,
Here.
Vice President Roberts is not signed on. President Hahn.
I am here. And would you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
Under
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
justice for all. Thank you. Before we get going on the rest of the agenda, I just got to clarify something that was said last night at the BVSA Meet the Candidates event. I'm only going to speak for myself, and my colleagues on the board may comment or not if they so choose. It's a really short statement. It was said by a BVSA board member that the biggest issue facing the Bear Valley Homeowners Association is the lack of cooperation between them and the CSD. Because of the CSD's refusal to meet with the BVSA for the liaison committee during this COVID pandemic. This is only half true. The CSD provides essential services under the laws of and permits filed with Kern County and the state of California. The governor's executive order N-29-20, the declared state of emergency, and social distancing directives prevented us from meeting with them in person. We cannot pick and choose which of their laws or guidelines to follow. The CSD told the BVSA that we would meet them via Zoom, and the BVSA flat out refused to meet via Zoom. They would only agree to conduct the liaison committee meetings in person. This is the reason that the business between our two entities has been slowed. It's always been my intention to work alongside our colleagues on the BVSA, and I look forward to getting our liaison committee meetings going again when the restrictions are lifted and not before. And I would prefer to hold them sooner via remote connections, but they remain uninterested. And I'll open the floor to my colleagues if they have any comments on that matter at all. Anyone?
Mr. President, I believe that I am happy enough to, can you hear me, Terry?
Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear Terry? Okay.
Yes.
It's my impression that general manager has a good working relationship with Wesley. And if they cannot iron things out, and I cannot believe that they cannot iron things out between them, surely the boards. So I wasn't at the meeting or did not participate in the meeting. So I don't know who said what, but I think they're full of bull.
Okay. Thank you, Director Quinn. Anyone else?
Mr. President, if I may,
Of course, Mr. Wiggins.
I personally have been working hand in hand with the association. Granted, it's not been the board of directors. I've not, been with them, but, with their employees out in the field. I mean, even today, we had a couple of their employees side by side with us. I feel like we have a great relationship with them. They're here to help us. We're here to help them. Like I said, I can't speak for the board, their board. Obviously, I can for ours. I think these gentlemen are more than willing to, go the extra mile for somebody just like I am. But we have been working with them.
Mr. President,
Thank you, Mr. Wiggins. And I was surprised to hear it too. So I'm not accusing anyone of anything, just to be clear. Mr. Malinen.
just a question for Mr. Wiggins. And I know we had heard comments from folks that use the trail as we were putting up the fence on the north end of the property. Who from the BVSA were you working with on that project?
Butch from the Equestrian Center and Mark Gonzalez from the association, and Brandon Hayes from the association, IGM rather. Yeah, they were extremely happy with what we had done and had nothing but good things to say, as well as the residents that walked back there.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Anyone else?
Mr. President, again, as with Mr. Quinn, I wasn't at the meeting, but I appreciate your comments, and I think it's, we just need to keep doing what we're doing and communicating well and participating, and you can't control other people's perceptions, but I appreciate your comments, and let's keep taking the high ground and doing the right thing.
All right, I appreciate that. All right, before I request for an approval of the agenda, Mr. Malinen asked to pull one of the action items off of our action item list. Mr. Malinen? If you're speaking, you're muted.
I am speaking. Was muted, so I apologize.
That's remedied.
Try again, restart.
Thank you.
Mr. President, members of the board, I would like to remove item 8C related to rehabilitating wells 9 and 10.
Okay. Questions by the board?
Bill, are you at liberty to advise why that's being removed, or is it
Yeah,
important?
we're going to take another look at what we can achieve in a total rehabilitation. You may have recognized we were looking to retain pumps and motors after we've done the visual televising and the remediation of the screens and so on. We're going to focus on doing one entirely, which is what we did with number 8 and 33. So a little change of plans. Will Parks and I've talked about it today, and we'd like to do that, but we're going to go out and get quotes for the whole thing, and we're hopeful that that will come in within what's been included in the lease with the BVSA.
Good deal. Thank you.
Then next, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda with the exclusion of item 8, Charlie.
Move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Motion by Quinn, second by Grace. Christie, roll call vote, please.
Director Grace,
Aye.
Director Jensen,
Aye.
Director Quinn,
Aye.
President Han.
Aye. Vote passes 4-0. The agenda is approved. Item 5, public comments on non-agenda items. Ms. McEwen.
Members of the public may address the board on matters not listed on this agenda. The board cannot take action on any item that is not on the agenda. The board or staff may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed, or may ask questions for clarification. These items may also be referred to staff or scheduled on a future agenda. There will be a separate opportunity for public comment for each item on the agenda. I did not receive any email requests to share, so let me see. We have a hand. Jiva?
Hello, good evening, everyone.
evening.
I wanted to inquire about the CAL FIRE dead tree removal. I know we talked about that yesterday, Bill, at the gym. I appreciate it at the gym with the coffee meeting. And I really appreciate that you have it prior to this meeting. It really helps. And I know I sent you an email, so I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, but basically wondering, when is the information going to be posted that shows all the tasking? And then you say you're trying to start making payments for them as they're progressing. And how are they accounting with the invoice that they completely finish each parcel and then they get paid proportionally for that? And has any more been worked out on them logging down the backside and why they're renegotiating that? And also the fact that they said that they would have a big mulcher that would do 20 some inches. And if you can expound on that, I appreciate it. Thank you, Bill.
Mr. President,
Okay.
would you like me to do that now or later?
If it's a
Whichever
quick,
you like.
I was asking the president.
if it's quick answer, let's just get it out of the way. If not, you can do it at your general manager comments.
I'll try to be brief then.
Thank you.
So they have been making progress. We had a phase 1A and a 1B. Those were, that first task area was split out so that it could coincide with the maximum amount that we could request in advance from the state, which we got, which is roughly $250,000. And so the tasks in 1A have been completed. There is a partial, and that may be what Jeev is referring to a little bit. Part of what she referenced, but I think we've heard from the logger and the forester, we were hoping to not have wood leave the valley. And there had been some reticence on using the deer trail by the logger, just based on the condition and so on of the road. And so I've heard from our forester that they intend to not have any logs removed from the valley. So we're hopeful that what we may be able to achieve is some great wood chips for everybody and anybody that wants them here. To that end, I don't have any more specifics other than as of yesterday, that's what I had heard. Relative to our process, we have, in advance of this, gone through not only the exemption process that I think the board's familiar with, the right of entry that property owners have to provide if they're going to participate. And then we have what is called a notice to proceed, which is identifying the parcels, the amount of acreage, the level of treatment, a cost, so we know what we will do. That is signed off and agreed to by the logger and the forester. And then following that, there is a notice of completion, again, executed by both the logger and then confirmed by the forester. So they have to go up and verify that the amount of acres that had been ID'd earlier have been in fact treated and completed. And it's upon receipt of all of those things that we can then pay the logger. So I think in answer to that question, we have process, procedures, and documentation in place.
Thank you. Next public comment.
Okay, Kathy Kinnear.
Hello, I'm on my cell phone, which I've never done before. So can you hear me?
It's working great, Kathy. Keep it up.
Okay, thank you. One comment happened yesterday to a friend of mine at the transfer station, and I thought I would raise this question. She witnessed someone coming in to dump several bags of trash, and they had no Bear Valley sticker on the window or RFD. And it appeared to her that the person was trying to dump chemicals based on the strong odors emitting from the bags. And the staff person at the time was sitting in the tractor, and she said, "He doesn't have stickers. What are you going to do?" And he said, "Oh, don't worry, it's on video and you'll get a fine," which really was upsetting to her. And I'm wondering, you know, why, and then I have a transfer station issue. And I'm sure others have seen trash strewn, particularly greenways, where people aren't tying their loads down. So if we're going to have staff, I would like to see that no one's admitted without proper Bear Valley credentials. I don't think, he told her the contractors have special rules. And I thought that landscapers might have some rules if they could prove the green waste was from a Bear Valley property. But I think there might need to be some upgraded training. And I really think we need to monitor people entering the gate. And I don't think people should be allowed to enter the green waste if they haven't tied off their load. They may have gotten their fine and nothing flew off, but if you go down Cumberland, there's several branches where someone has not tied down their load and they've obviously strewn out, you know, halfway down Cumberland. So I know we're paying for the staff and they do have other duties, but I'd really like to see the facility more locked down, I guess, if you will, so that we're sure it's only residents and we're sure they're following the rules and tying down their loads before they're allowed to enter if they're hauling green waste. So that's my comment.
Thank you for that, Kathy. I've seen trash alongside Cumberland and limbs and branches as well. I appreciate that. I am sure staff will look into this.
Okay. We have no more hands up.
Thank you. Consent calendar as number 6. Ms. McEwen.
Okay, let's see. Consent items are considered routine and are intended to be acted upon in one motion without discussion. During this portion of the meeting, the consent calendar will be read aloud. Prior to approval, the president will give the board, staff, and public the opportunity to pull any item for discussion. The remaining calendar will be acted upon. Any pulled items will then be heard and acted upon individually. A, approve minutes of the April 8, 2021 regular board meeting. B, accept April 2021 committee report. C, accept register of warrants for April 2021.
Any members of the board wish to pull item Alpha, Bravo, or Charlie? Any members of staff wish to pull items Alpha, Bravo, or Charlie? Members of the public wish to pull item Alpha, Bravo, or Charlie? May I have a motion, please?
Mr. President, I'd move to approve the consent calendar approving the minutes of April 8, 2021 regular board meeting, accept April 2021 committee report, and accept register of warrants for April 2021.
Got a motion by Grace, second by Jensen. Ms. McEwen.
Director Grace,
Aye.
Director Jensen,
Aye.
Director Quinn,
Aye.
President Han.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. Item 7, disclosures by Board of Directors. Back to you, Ms. McEwen.
Board members are asked to disclose any outside communications with individuals and organizations that have an action item on this agenda that pertains directly to them or their specific personal or private interests, and which communication is not included or disclosed in the agenda package, so that all interested persons have an equal opportunity to express and represent their interests.
Director Grace.
No, sir, I have nothing to disclose.
Director Jensen.
I have none.
Director Quinn.
I have none, thank you.
And I have none as well. Item 8 is action items. Let's move to item Alpha, Board of Directors, Mr. Malinen and Mr. Davis.
Mr. President, members of the board, attached in the agenda packet is the letter from Vice President Roberts indicating his intent to resign effective June 30th or upon the swearing in of a successor, whichever occurs first. And so you have on your agenda tonight 2 items related to that. The first would be the acceptance of the resignation. And then thereafter, the next item deals with the process that you can follow or that is available for you. So the first item is to accept the resignation of Director Roberts.
All right. Board comments, Director Grace.
Only to say, definitely sorry to hear about Director Roberts' resignation or request to resign. And he's been a stabilizing force on the board, and much appreciate his welcoming me to the board and teaching me the ways of the Robert's rules and such. So very much appreciate that and appreciate the discussion this evening on this.
Thank you, sir. Director Jensen.
Just wish him and his family well and all the best.
Thank you, sir. Director Quinn.
I can only second and third the statements made so far by Directors Grace and Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn. Same here. They spoke it well with reluctance. I think we have to accept. Do you want these taking these separate I guess we can take them separately. We can't move on to the next one unless we do the first one. Motion to do item 8AI.
I move that Board of Directors accept the resignation of Director Roberts from the Board of Directors effective June 30th, 2021, or upon the swearing in of his successor.
Second.
Motion by Quinn, second by Grace. Christie, please.
Director Grace,
Aye.
Director Jensen,
Aye.
Director Quinn,
Aye.
President Han.
And also aye. Item Alpha 2, determine the method for filling the seat on the Board of Directors. Probably back to Mr. Malinen.
Mr. President, members of the board, pursuant to government code, when a vacancy occurs, then the board has essentially two choices. There is a third item for you, but it is an appointment by the remainder of the board or a call for a special election to fill the vacancy. And there's essentially 60-day time periods in which to take action on those items. One of the aspects I think that bears noting is in contacting the county, the cost of a special election was estimated at between $60,000 and $70,000. Historically, the Board of Directors has, over the, I believe, 5 or 6 vacancies that have occurred, made appointments and taken that path. But it is up to the board to choose which path. Somewhat of a presumption going down the path. We provided you with some information on appointments that you may want to take into consideration. I would share, I think, in the conversation I had with Mr. Roberts, he was hopeful that the board may be able to fill that position assumed by appointment, but maybe at your June 30th meeting, therefore there'd really be no gap in service on the board, that you wouldn't be lacking a member. So the suggestions we have for you kind of take that into account, provides some process, some voluntary or optional statement of qualifications that people can share so that you may all have similar type information. But certainly if someone just indicates they are interested, they can send you something and be considered. The process is open to the public all the way through, but that, I guess, is, I'll stop with that. That third option I referenced is in the event the board does not, within the allotted time, either appoint or call for a special election, then the County Board of Supervisors would be the one to make an appointment. So that may be rare, but that is what the code calls for. So I'll stand for any questions, as would General Counsel Davis or Christie if needed.
Thank you, sir. Director Grace.
I don't have any specific questions on the respective methods. I would say it's my feeling at this point, the cost of a special election is not merited, and just given the timing that it would basically carry us through with a new member through effectively another year and a half before the next election, which we would also be paying for. So with that, I would be supporting an appointment, the process of filling the vacancy via an appointment.
Thank you, sir. Director Jensen.
Just a quick question. Is that $60,000 to $70,000 price tag taking into consideration that there's probably going to be a recall election in November as well? And wouldn't it be less if we tagged it onto that ballot?
And I'll try this unless Christie might have any more, but it was not specific to that. And as far as we're aware at this point, there's not been a called election. That may have been part of the presumption in their response. So they didn't differentiate.
So we don't have any hard numbers from Kern County then as to the actual cost then?
Well, we do as to a special election. Your point was if there were a recall election and this were a part of that, what the cost might be. And I don't have that information. We called to inquire about a special election per the code, and that was the answer that we got.
Okay.
Good question, Director Jensen. Director Quinn.
No comment.
I'm with Director Grace. Even if it was $5,000, I'd rather keep the $5,000 and just appoint someone. Hopefully we get some qualified candidates to show interest in getting on the board. No hands in the public. Does staff like that? Yeah, it's fully the board's decision here. I'm okay with calling for a motion. Would anyone like to present a motion on how we proceed?
We do have a hand from the public.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong screen. Thank you, Christine.
Okay. Kathy Kinnear.
Thank you. If I understand the government code correctly, the board has, is it 60 days to make an appointment, Bill, before the County Board of Supervisors would make an appointment?
Yes, I think the appointment has to be within 60 days of the effective date, which we at that point would presume would be the 30th.
And my understanding of the timing of a special election for the recall is that there's a quite involved process. There's a 30-day period, which I believe we're in now, for anyone who signed a petition who would like their signature removed. Then there's a 30-day period for the legislative analyst office or some entity to determine what the cost in consultation with the counties. And then there's a 30-day joint legislative review of the cost of the special election. And then no greater than 60 days, no less than 60 days and no more than 80 days is the window to actually call the special election. So I'm not sure I'm exactly correct in my calculations, but I suspect the special election will be sometime in October. So I think that would put us outside the boundaries of the government code for a special election, regardless of the cost of the special election. That's all, just a comment.
Thank you, Kathy. So if I'm getting that right, even if we were trying to wait for a recall election ballot to save some cost, it might exceed the 60 days after his resignation date, meaning that the county supervisors would step in and decide it for us anyway.
I would like to clarify, Mr. President, that the board has to call the election within 60 days. It doesn't have to hold the election.
Okay.
If
Correct.
the board, the next established election date would be November 2nd. If the board calls for it before June 24th, if it is after June 24th, the next established election date is April 12th of 2022.
Thank you, Ms. McEwen. All right. Request for a motion. How do you want to proceed, board?
I move the Board of Directors determine the method of filling the vacancy on the Board of Directors by appointment on June 10th, 2021, by the process recommended above.
Sorry, Mr. President, I was on mute. Second.
I have a motion by Quinn, second by Grace. Roll call vote. Ms. McEwen.
Director Grace,
Aye.
Director Jensen,
No.
Director Quinn,
Aye.
President Roberts.
No.
I'm sorry.
The other guy.
President Hahn.
I vote aye. That motion passes 3-1. We will fill the vacancy by appointment. Item 8 Bravo, accept report of delinquent accounts and schedule public hearings to place delinquencies on tax roll for collection. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, President Hahn. California Government Code allows for the Board of Directors to place our delinquent utility account balances on the tax roll to be collected in the same manner as property taxes. The process for doing that is outlined in Government Code as well as our district code. And that involves first coming up with a report that lists each parcel and the delinquent amounts. We then would publish a notice of the public hearing in the Tehachapi News for 2 successive weeks. And we would also mail a written notice to each property owner. We would then hold the public hearing, which tentatively we would hold that on June 10th to hear any objections or protests. After that public hearing is closed, we would have a final list and a final amount of the charges. And then we would file prior to August 10th with Kern County that final report. And after that, it would be placed on the tax roll for next year to be collected with property taxes. So to start off this process, staff reviewed all of our delinquent accounts more than 90 days. We mailed out a delinquent account reminder letter to all the affected property owners on April 20th. We informed them of their delinquent amounts due. We also provided some contact info for a state program as well as the Kern County Housing Authority, some COVID relief programs if they could qualify. And then we disclosed the next steps in this process for going to the tax roll. When we first prepared this list, we had 110 parcels that were delinquent, and that totaled 126,000. Since that time, we have had 17 accounts pay, a total of 18,000, bringing our current list now down to 93 parcels owing 107,000 in delinquent utility bills. With that, I'm available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Questions from just 1 second. The questions from staff.
I have a couple of questions.
I'll come back to the board. I'll just go to staff, then the public, then we'll do the board. Thank you, sir. Questions from the public? I don't see any hands. Now the board, Director Grace.
I didn't have any questions, sir.
Director Jensen.
Yeah, it's just once upon a time when I found myself in the Mojave court just about every Thursday, court was split up between traffic and civil and small claims. And I recall an employee of the CSD being there almost every Thursday doing small claims on accounts just like this. And so I was wondering how the effectiveness of it is between doing small claims and tax liens.
To be honest, I think that was done probably many years before I was here. I've been here for 3 years. I don't believe we've done that. I have heard of that done in the past. We were placing more liens, on properties for, I think, weed abatement and other type of charges, not necessarily going to the tax roll. So I couldn't tell you the effectiveness of that. I do know, since I've been here, we do this process. We typically have less accounts and a smaller delinquent amount that go to the tax roll. But I think a big reason for that is we were able to go through a water shutoff process and send reminder letters in that because we have the ability to shut off people's water. However, there's been a moratorium on shutoffs from the state right now. And so I think that's a big reason why we have an increase in the delinquent amounts and the delinquent accounts because we cannot shut off water right now. But in the past, it's been fairly successful going this route because it's now a part of their tax bill. And if they are paying their taxes, it will get remitted to us from Kern County.
Okay.
I would just add to that in terms of effective.
Go ahead, Mr. Davis. There's quite an echo though.
Is that better? I don't know where that was coming from. Hopefully it wasn't me. In terms of effectiveness, I would agree with Mr. Jones that certainly I don't believe the district has been doing a lot of the small claims stuff for some time. And even pursuing a small claims, you just get a judgment that doesn't render it enforceable until you go after the person. Whereas, you would end up kind of doing the same thing. You get a judgment, you put a lien on their property. Whereas that's exactly what this is doing. So I think in terms of cost effectiveness, Director Jensen, this is a far superior process. And while it doesn't always guarantee payment, I think it sends a stronger message, and they risk, more penalties from the county than they would if we just pursued a standard lien process. So I think this is definitely the preferred way to go.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Let's see, Director Quinn.
I have no questions.
Thank you. I have no questions. I don't see any hands up in public. I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I move the Board of Directors accept the report of delinquent accounts and schedule a public hearing for June 10th, 2021 to place delinquencies on the tax roll for collection.
Second.
Motion by Grace, second by Quinn. Ms. McEwen, roll call vote.
Director Grace,
Aye.
Director Jensen,
Aye.
Director Quinn,
Aye.
President Han.
Aye, motion carries 4-0. Item C was pulled. Item 8, Delta, approve purchase of remote control slope mower from RemoteMowers LLC for roads division in the amount of $38,000. Mr. Malinen.
Mr. President, members of the board, we have pursued getting what I think is somewhat unique in the way of a mower, in that it is a remote controlled machine, and the price is $38,000. That is the lowest that we got from the various quotes. And I'm excited about the approach, because it certainly can do anything on a piece of flat ground, and we can use it throughout our road right-of-ways. But as we do encounter slopes, I appreciate the remote control because it provides greater safety than having an employee on a slope on a large piece of equipment. So the price is, we think, reasonable. What we've been able to do is pay for it from savings within the current budget. There were some savings when we purchased the roller, and there's also some savings from a drainage project that we're not undertaking. And so without having an impact on our budget, we're able to afford this. And so we're hopeful we can move forward with it and would recommend purchase.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Malinen. I don't see any hands up in the public. We'll go to the board.
Mr.
Director.
President,
Yes.
I did get an email comment on this agenda item.
Please proceed.
Okay, it is from Tim Trujillo. He says, I fully support the purchase of equipment to clear our roadsides of brush and vegetation. With the coming fire season, we definitely need the roadsides cleared to provide adequate fire protection. Our roads should provide a natural fire break, but right now, with the extensive brush growth, a wildfire with any wind can easily jump the road. The thick brush acts as a torch for the brush on the opposite side of the road. I hope the equipment being considered is capable of cutting the thick sagebrush and gritty shrubs that have been allowed to take root in the past several years. It's definitely time to invest in fire safety.
Thank you, Ms. McEwen. Mr. Trujillo, those were outstanding comments. Director Grace.
Bill, I didn't see a picture of the mower. It's entirely possible it was there and I just missed it. I was thumbing through this item. Can you give us some idea of the dimensions? How big is this?
I believe
just a deck with a controller on it. What is it? How is it configured?
Sure. Let me ask if Daniel might have a picture and whether or not we can get it up for you. But I would say it's a 54-inch deck wheels fore and aft, and then the operator has a handheld device that controls the movements and the actions of the mower. I apologize, we didn't.
Similar to a riding mower, just without the seat, basically, or the steering wheel.
Yeah,
Effectively.
yeah.
Okay.
Let's. There we go. Look at this.
There it is. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel.
All right, that's great. I appreciate it.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
That's all I
for
have.
that. Thank you, Director Grace. Director Jensen?
And to answer Mr. Trujillo's questions, I watched that video of it in use, and it looks like it cuts up brush up to about 2 inches thick, I think. So looks pretty cool.
All right. I like it. Director Quinn?
Yeah, I really like the video also. Transportation, we have an available trailer that we can move this thing around effectively to get full use in the valley.
Yes, sir, we do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
So you're welcome.
Excellent questions by everyone. Nothing to add. I'm in full support. I'll entertain a motion from my colleagues.
I move the Board of Directors approve the purchase of a new remote control slope mower from RemoteMowers LLC in the amount of $38,000.
Second.
Motion by Jensen, second by Grace. Roll call vote. Ms. McEwen?
Director Grace,
Aye.
Director Jensen,
Aye.
Director Quinn,
Aye.
President Han.
An enthusiastic aye. Well done, staff, for getting this going. There's been lots of public comments about getting the banks along the roads mowed, so this will take care of that. Good job. Item 8, Echo, approved designation of surplus equipment and disposal by auction. Mr. Malinen.
Mr. President, members of the board, we have numerous pieces of equipment that have reached the end of their useful life. They are listed in your agenda packet, from some plow trucks to a dozer to a bobcat and even a trailer. Part of the challenge we and others may face is when you go to the tiers for air quality, and we have to maintain an average. And so we're needing to start retiring some of this as well for that reason. But you'll see we've tried to include the hours or the miles and the estimated repair costs, and then a value that we may hope to achieve. Per our code, we're also supposed to offer it up before, so our homeowners association might have an opportunity, if they wish, to get it from us. But the action recommended would be to designate these items listed here as surplus and to authorize us to put them up for a public auction.
Thank you, Mr. Malinen. I can't see the attendees. I don't see hands in the audience. Director Grace, comments on this?
Bill, what is the auctioneer's commission? Do we know that, or is it indexed to the sales amount?
I don't have that answer, and perhaps Mr. Wiggins does, or someone else. But Larry?
Sorry, I was muted. No, I don't have that answer either.
We have a rough order of magnitude. I mean, is it $500? Is it $5,000? Not to put you on the spot, just trying to get a handle on what our net is going to be.
I believe it was over 10, but it really depends on what we actually get for the dozer.
If I might, Mr. President, Chief Melanson, do you have a recollection when we put some of our equipment up, what the seller's percent might have been?
I don't, Bill. I can sure dig up where we sent the last vehicles and what the cut was. I'd be happy to get that information for you, though.
Bill, I've got some information.
Okay. a hand up from the audience that might be our Dawn. Oh,
Thank you, Christy. I'll go to Mr. Jones.
okay.
So I found the receipt when we did the police vehicles a couple years ago, and it's saying a 15% commission.
So it is a function of whatever we ultimately get. If we get more, it'll be more. If we get less, I understand. Okay, thank you, Hamid.
Christy, you want to turn to that? Did you have someone else?
Actually, she dropped her hand, so it's probably because Hamid answered.
Director Jensen.
The first item on there, it says mileage/hours on the Ford F-350 plow truck. Is that mileage or hours, the 26,260?
The pickup trucks are mileage.
So 26,000 miles on that one.
Correct.
And we're going to survey that out.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. President, part of the challenge I understand with that one is we've gone through 4 transmissions. That's why you see that maintenance cost to date being as high as it is. And it's currently inoperable again.
Is that maintenance cost to date, though, for the life of the vehicle that we've had it that long?
I believe so. Is it, Larry?
No, that was as far as we can go back on the data. That's probably 10 years ago. I do have a date, but it's buried in here somewhere. I apologize, Bill. Really, I'm sorry. We're lacking a few years on a lot of this equipment, which will probably inflate the maintenance cost on a lot of this.
Do we have a fleet manager here?
Kind of, sort of, it's me. I'm the supervisor. We do not have a manager.
Okay.
Thank you, Director Jensen. Director Quinn.
I have no questions.
All right, I have no questions. No, I have no questions or comments. I'll entertain a motion.
I move the Board of Directors approve the designation of the listed vehicles as surplus equipment and authorize the disposal of said vehicles by public auction if the vehicles are not claimed by the BVSA or another local agency.
I'll second.
Motion by Quinn, second by Grace. Roll call vote. Ms. McEwen.
Director Grace,
Aye.
Director Jensen,
Aye.
Director Quinn,
Aye.
President Han.
I also vote aye. That passes 4-0. Happy selling. Action item 8, Foxtrot. Approved transfers from general fund balance to roads fund. Mr. Jones, Mr. Malinen.
Mr. President, members of the board, as you know, we are continuing to develop and finalize the budget. And as Mr. Jones and I were going through the road fund and all that it entails, being, I think, aware of the fund balance, we talked about perhaps having the general fund assist with the last debt service payment for the Bear Valley and Cumberland Road project. That's about $230,000 per year. And, without something of that injection into the road fund, its fund balance would be getting pretty low. So that prompted Ms. McEwen to, I think, recollect some action on behalf of the board. So we've included some of that documentation, which to us seems pretty clear that at the time that the board contracted out its dispatch services, it was already engaged in this road project and its financing, and had identified the savings from the dispatch services to apply to and make the debt service payments on that road project. The first transfer occurred, and we were talking about the last But the other 3 years did not occur. Neither Mr. Jones nor I were here, and we were unaware of this. And so what we're proposing is to, consistent with that prior board action and intent, make those transfers for those 3 years in the middle, as well as we will budget for that last one. It might help to explain why the general fund had a greater excess to its reserve, and the roads fund was as depleted as it was. With this action, what you'll see is the general fund will be fine. We'll still be in excess of our reserve fund, and the road fund actually will be in pretty good shape relative to its contingency reserve. So we would recommend that you approve these transfers, and I think that will help certainly the road fund and its balance, and help us to continue to move forward prior to having any other larger actions relative to the roads assessment.
All right, thank you for the explanation. Ms. McEwen for public.
Okay, we have Kathy Kinnear.
Thank you. And my apologies, I didn't get to read this detail before the call today. It's my understanding that our budgets are basically on a cash basis, in that if a prior board said, yeah, let's use those savings, but then the board doesn't take those actions, that motion doesn't carry over as an accrual. Is that right, Hamid?
That's correct. I mean, each budget, is approved annually, and, whatever is included in that budget is what's approved for that year's fiscal budget. So there could be examples of, multi-year plans or projects, but if it's approved in 1 year, not in the next year, it doesn't mean that it's a part of that next year's budget.
That's right. So it should be for the board is the general fund does have, I hate to use the term excess revenue, it is above the minimum contingency. And so regardless of the past intent, the general fund balance is available to the board to spend accordingly. They didn't budget it for this year. So it brings up a point for me that the board has a set of budget and policy procedures. And I think it was going to be a priority for the finance committee this year to review those. And one thing that I think needs to be addressed is it's fine to have a minimum contingency level, but there is no criteria about how we spend this excess funds. There's been no process, and I raised this issue over the sewer use of general funds for the capital improvements in the sewer. I think there needs to be a policy by which the board will make decisions about how they use perhaps contingency funds. If the excess funds in the road budget exceed 50% and the minimum's 25%, that money above 50% should have a public process by which, or a criteria by which we say how those funds will be allocated. And I've had past conversation with Hamid that's been very helpful for me to understand how we end up with excess revenue in the general fund. And it's partly because it's very hard to predict actual general fund property tax revenue from the county. And so we actually have to kind of budget conservatively on revenue And then if we get more, whoopee, it goes into the reserves. So I appreciate.
Comment period is up. So
Okay, thank you. Any response to that? All right. Comments from the board, Director Grace.
I would just say, I know Hamid, we did discuss on the last finance committee meeting an upcoming kind of omnibus revisiting of policies. So if you don't mind just giving a kind of the same update you gave me at the finance committee of where that stands and what it entails and when it's likely to take place.
So yeah, the district has these budget and fiscal policies that were developed many years ago, probably at least 10 years ago. We have kind of readopted them with our budget the last few years, but we would like to really take a look at those because some of those policies may be outdated, they may not be applicable anymore, and maybe we can make improvements to it. So that is something that we think would be excellent for the finance committee, and we are planning on bringing that to the next finance committee for review.
Great, thank you. And Mr. President, my only other comment, I would say kudos to Christy McEwen for being the institutional memory of the CSD and bringing this this item to everybody's attention.
Well said, Director Grace. Director Jensen.
Does this transfer of funds at all represent anything given back to the roads department from all the work they did to the transfer station, or was that ever done?
No, it's unrelated.
Okay. Can we expect funds to go in as a result of the work on the transfer station anytime?
I don't think any more than have already been accrued there to date.
Okay.
Anything else, Director Jensen?
No.
Appreciate that. Yes, sir. All right, Director Quinn.
No comments. I think that this is an unforeseen benefit. I don't know that this is in any way arguable. This seems like a very good find on the district's part.
I tend to agree with Director Quinn. At this time, I'll call for a motion.
Mr. President, I move the Board of Directors approve transfers from the general fund to the roads fund in the amount of $689,364 to represent the $229,878 annual contribution toward the roads fund debt service for fiscal years 2018 to 19, 2019 to 20, and 2020 to 21.
Second.
I had a double second. I'll take a motion from Director Grace and a second from Director Jensen. And Ms. McEwen, would you please call roll?
Director Grace,
Aye.
Director Jensen,
Aye.
Director Quinn,
Aye.
President Hahn,
Aye. Motion carries 4-0. Item 8, golf. Schedule special budget meetings. Mr. Jones and Mr. Malinen.
Go ahead, Hamid.
Thank you, President Hahn. The district is in the middle of its budget preparation process. California Government Code provides that special districts shall prepare or have adopted a preliminary budget by July 1st and then a final budget by September 1st. However, district staff prefer to finalize our budget prior to the start of the fiscal year, which is July 1st. And so we're working towards that goal. We'd like to schedule a special board meeting with the public called a budget study session at 10 a.m. on Thursday, May 27th. And then also a special board meeting at 10 a.m. on Thursday, June 24th to hold the public hearing and adopt the final budget, again, prior to the July 1 start of next fiscal year. And with that, we're available for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Are there any hands up in the public?
Yes. Kathy Kinnear.
So this relates to the previous item. You just made a mid-year adjustment to your budget and spent $689,000. That's not something that normally happens from a budget perspective. And I really think that this has to be addressed, that in the finance policies, that mid-year budget adjustments have to have some criteria. And it's pretty much like, oh, we found us a pot of money, so let's just go spend it. And it's out of context from the total budget. And I objected with it on the sewer when we were taking money out of the general fund to fund those two capital projects. I'm not saying I object to the expenditure of it. I object to the process. And I object that there is no criteria for how the board will step back and look at the whole picture, which is what you do in a budget process. So I really would like the record to reflect that. And I would really like to hear John address this specifically in the Finance Committee with criteria going forward for mid-year budget adjustments of this extraordinary size. It's $689 million. It's not a minor adjustment. Thank you.
Appreciate the comment. We'll go to where we're on item 8, call for the special budget meetings. So Director Grace.
Mr. President, I do not have any comment other than to say I personally am not available on that day, so I have a prior commitment. So I presume you will be able to get a quorum with Mr. Roberts still on the board, but just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Thank you for that. Director Jensen.
I have nothing.
Director Quinn.
Like John, I'm not available on the 27th.
Right. So if only if Director Roberts can be there, that would give us 3. Should we consider changing that date? I think we should consider changing that date.
I would say yes.
What does the staff think? I was asking for the date.
Mr. President, members of the board, we, are somewhat following our last few years of process, if you will. I don't know that we necessarily have any challenges moving that date. If we're from the 27th, I know we have a number of things scheduled on the 3rd and or the 4th. If the 28th works as an example, we could probably do that. But hopefully we can get it done. It typically involves an overall presentation. If there is some direction from the board to change some items in the budget, gives us time before the end of June meeting, which again is consistent with what we've done the last couple of years. So I would ask maybe about the 28th.
I would definitely support the 28th.
I can do the 28th also.
Director Jensen.
28th of May?
Yes, sir.
That's fine.
All right.
All right, I also agree. So we can just move this one 10 a.m. to the Friday, the 28th of May. I think everyone's on board with that. So let's get this official and put it in a motion, changing the date from May 27th to 28th.
Is the June 24th workable for everybody? That's a Thursday also.
Everybody, I see nods.
Yeah, as a general statement, Christie, Thursdays are tough for me.
Yeah.
Dr. Quinn, you're good though with the June one?
I'm good with the 24th. Does John have an issue on that day?
Yeah, that's gonna be a challenge for me, Mr. Quinn.
Staff? What can we do?
If we can go 25th from Thursdays to Fridays, if that's acceptable. I know, Christy, you've got something, but hopefully we can work around that.
25th, gentlemen?
I've got something the 25th. I can't do that one.
23rd?
23rd?
23rd would work.
23rd, fine.
All right. Mr. Quinn?
23rd is good.
23rd. All right. So let's hear a motion for these new dates unless somebody objects real quick.
So we've got May 28th and June 23rd.
All right, board, let's go. What's your pleasure?
I move the Board of Directors schedule a budget study session for May 28th, 2021, and a special board meeting for June 23rd, 2021.
Second.
10 a.m.
I have a motion by Jensen, just a second by Grace. Ms. McEwen?
Director Grace,
Aye.
Director Jensen,
Aye.
Director Quinn,
Aye.
President Han.
Aye, motion carries 4-0. Those are our budget meetings. Great. Item 8, hotel, accept quarterly investment report as of March 31, 2021. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, President Han. The item before you is the quarterly investment report as of March 31st. It details the balances of the district's investment accounts as well as our operating accounts. In our investment accounts, we had a balance of 6.6 million, and that was a decrease of 243,000 as compared to our quarter end balance at December 31st. And then a balance in our operating accounts of 661,000, and that was a slight increase of 122,000. Overall, our balances at March 31st were 7.3 million, and that was a decrease of 121,000 compared to the prior quarter end at December 31st. And that's just a result of normal operations. The final page of the report further breaks down those balances amongst the district's various funds and the prorated balances amongst those investment and operating accounts. And I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Now to the public, Ms. McEwen.
Nothing from the public.
Thank you, Director Grace.
Nothing for me, sir.
Director Jensen.
Nothing, sir.
Director Quinn.
Nothing with thanks to Hamid also.
All right, second to thanks, nothing for me. What's your pleasure, board?
Move the Board of Directors accept the quarterly investment report as of March 31st, 2021.
Second.
Motion by Quinn, second by Jensen. Ms. McEwen.
Director Grace,
Aye.
Director Jensen,
Aye.
Director Quinn,
Aye.
President Han.
I vote aye. The motion carries 4-0. Item 8, India. A solid waste rate study, preliminary draft report. Mr. Malinen and Mr. Jones.
Mr. President, members of the board, we have just a brief PowerPoint to kind of help walk us through this item. If we could tee that up. There it
Do
is.
this.
So this is the preliminary draft rate study. The reasons for this, and as the board is aware, and I hope the public is aware, this will be the third of our enterprise fund rate adjustments, the first being the water system, and it was the one most in need. The second most in need was the sewer, and now solid waste. The board had recognized back in about 2017 that all of these funds needed to be adjusted and or the rates adjusted because of the condition they were in. And they essentially had structural deficits, meaning the revenue coming in.
Wait, that's the wrong one. I'm sorry.
Hey, that looks familiar though.
That's the wrong date. I'll get it right.
Okay. Anyway, the structural deficit means the revenue is not adequate for just normal operating. And so one of the first things we did with the others that we do here as well is to recognize what the goals are. And they essentially are the same, that we have adequate operational funds to run the enterprise, that we essentially meet our reserve fund by the board's policy, and then that we have some monies available for capital during the 5-year period that we model on these. I would note in this one, all right, let's try the next page and see how that looks, Christy. This shows the rationale, and I was going to hit this fourth item, which is that the rates have not been adjusted since 2007. Which is even longer, I believe, than some of the sewer and water rates had not been adjusted. And what you'll see here is this is a relatively flat revenue bar. Our expenses have increased, and so an adjustment is needed. Next. This shows the magnitude, and for the board members that had gone through the other rate adjustments, you may see the familiar model format and template. So we are continuing to use that. Hopefully it's helpful to everyone that's looking at this. The last several years, this delta here, which is the operating loss, has increased. One of the most significant aspects of that is staffing. And in the report, you will see that we've identified a number of things that affect our personnel costs right here, salaries, benefits. The first is staffing needed to monitor the site pursuant to our permit. So we have a couple of positions there. And then effectively, these numbers here that are actuals were too low in that we had a number of vacancies that contribute to the cost of operations, specifically the facilities supervisor, the public works director, the administrative services director. Those all contribute to the costs of the enterprise through the allocation process. They had been vacant for a number of years. We've since filled those, but those costs then also transfer over. So that's a significant part of this. Let's go to the next one, please. So we've had an annual deficit. We have to take care of just the normal kinds of capital and working on our facility. So we'll, I believe, well, let me hit the highlights. Part of what we've done is to include capital. So when we talked about the rates hadn't changed since 2007, those rates and the rates prior to that did not provide for capital. We experienced this in the sewer rate adjustment as well, where I think they had maybe $5,000, but inadequate to continue to do what you need to operate the facilities. In this case, you'll see the capital needed in the first couple of years, and we've tried to balance out the adjustment. We would like to keep it as low as we can, but we also want to be realistic about what the needs are. So some things have moved a little bit out so as to not have an initial significantly large increase. The increase is just under $10 per month. But we put in capital items to help control access. So we've talked about a gate that would use the same kind of RFID amenity card access. Someone earlier in the meeting talked about, maybe it was Ms. Kinnear, talked about, somebody didn't have a sticker. Well, we can envision putting in some controls that would require a card with an RFID embedded in it as your access mechanism. We've included some paving costs to, get rid of dust and to smooth things out. We then also look at some of the equipment. So just as you looked at equipment for some disposal, the pieces that are out there today are even older. They are from 2006 and 2007. We mostly rely on a backhoe and a front loader to either compact our household waste or to load either green waste or manure waste. So those items will need to be replaced. So we have those kinds of things. One that I know is in there is a roof for the manure area. And we've included that because the manure, when wet, cuts our ability in half. We can only haul half of what we would if it were dry. So if we can keep it dry, we can cut our transport costs by a great deal. So we include those kinds of improvements that might save us money. Another one in there is a wood chipper. We've found that when we can chip the wood before putting it into the dumpster, that the volume that we can haul off is much greater and therefore reduce the number of bins. Our system is a contract that charges based on the costs to waste management to get rid of those bins at the landfill. So those costs we expect will continue to increase over time, but it's not based on tons, et cetera. So I think those were maybe the highlights of that. Go ahead with that next one that you had, please. One of the things that we recognize, and this upper chart shows how the expenses have increased. You'll see the tonnage has fluctuated with a high of 11,000 tons, but over the last couple of years, we've managed to maybe get the tonnage down, but not necessarily the number of bins. So again, we hope to make some progress on that with some of the capital improvements, but that you can see has resulted in, over the course of this graph, $50,000 a year more in just the disposal costs. The other thing we show down here, and I'm hopeful it will have an impression on people in the community, because these are the types of items that our residents and neighbors have been throwing away into our household or our green waste or our manure pile, but mostly the household. And you can see the list is pretty big and the items are pretty big. So when someone throws a hot tub into this bin, it takes up a lot of room, and it means we can't get rid of a lot of other household waste. Therefore, the number of bins increases. And those items are not supposed to be disposed of here. Essentially, what the bin system is supposed to accommodate is your household waste. It's what comes out of your kitchen, it comes out of the, your trash baskets around the home. It's the packing that some of your purchases are coming in, things of relatively small, but it's not a whole house carpet. It's not your chain link fencing or railroad ties or your motorcycle. Those items are really supposed to be the responsibility of the individual, and they should be taking them to the landfill. So what we've tried to do over the last couple of years is improve our monitoring to remind and help people understand those things aren't supposed to be put into the bins. We've improved, I believe, through having controlled access to the site rather than 24/7. It's now 12/5. And I think consequently, we've seen some of our tonnage go down because it may be more household waste than these kinds of items that are thrown in. And the particularly dangerous ones are the household hazardous waste, whether it's the gases or the oils or the fuels or pesticides, etc. Next slide, please. So effectively, here's what our modeling shows. And in the report, you'll see within the model, we continue as we have with our other rate adjustments to focus on within the 5-year time frame, that at the 5th year, we have a positive number relative to the fund balance policy. So along the way, we have capital items and adjustments. Here's the net result. We proposed that the first rate adjustment would be $9.19. Then in February, and this is consistent with the others, we would have the next adjustment, and then a year after that. Interestingly, the 4th and 5th years, we don't propose increases. So we have just even recently gotten some market data that suggests these are not out of line. I think one of the pluses for the community, though, is as opposed to some systems that rely on curb roll-off 96-gallon containers, our residents can bring as much household waste as they generate. They can't bring all the other stuff on that list, is the point. But if you had enough after the Christmas holiday, as an example, we take it. And that is maybe one of the benefits of the system that we do. Lastly, I would say we've not changed this system from kind of its current operations. We propose that there will be some subsequent improvements to help manage the site, but it's not anything different than each house will pay this amount per month, oh yeah, that one. I didn't know my cursor was working. Thank you. Okay, next page. All right, these are the Prop 218 requirements that we will satisfy as a result of the adjustment. Can't exceed what it costs. These are enterprise funds. Those monies stay with solid waste. It is proportional to our costs, and then it's got to be available to the properties. So this is our proposed timeline for you, which here's this evening. Part of the second aspect of this is to, if you have any comments, number one, but then to direct us to proceed with our outreach. So similar to our other rate adjustments, the staff will prepare PowerPoints. We will have meeting opportunities to review that PowerPoint and to explain to the public what the needs are and why. Take questions, comments, and I've tried to stress, if people see something wrong with the study, if the math doesn't add up or whatever, please let us know, because the intent is to make any appropriate adjustments and present it to the board at your June 10th meeting. And so from here, as a preliminary draft, we would have a draft that goes to the board, and at that meeting then you basically finalize it. And that is the study that shows up at the public hearing. We're proposing a special meeting on July 29th, and that August 1st, those new rates would become effective. And I believe that is the end of our outline and presentation for you. So I stand for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Malinen. Questions from the public? Ms. McEwen?
We do. Jiva.
Hello, thank you, Bill, for the presentation. As you know, I sent you an email and I have some questions. I was hoping some of them might have been addressed. And that was including in Prop 218, where it addresses that anybody that's any property that has immediate available access to the service is subject to the fee or charge. And that would include all the properties here. I didn't know how many we have that are vacant. And to that point, if they're not charged, and the discussion was that the transfer station would be secured no matter what, but being is that they're not charged, and the transfer station would have to be monitored until it's secured, that these people that were not paying that service or fee would not have access to that. And it is a convenience, of course, but those property owners are mandated to do weed abatement also if neighborly structures are within a certain amount of their fence line. So of course, I think they'd want to have access to the green waste also. And so that was part of my question there. And what did Don come up? I know he was going to look at that legal wise. And so I was wondering what's coming up with that. And, you know, with the HOA fees, everybody pays them whether they have a vacant lot or not. I know we're not the association, but again, I don't see how that would not be recognized, those folks. And are they getting, will they be informed at all that they will be locked out of the transfer station usage? So that was part of my questions there. Thank you.
So I did receive your email. I cannot answer all your questions at this point, but certainly we can take them into consideration over the next month as we're moving forward and getting answers to some of your questions, particularly Prop 218 type things.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next question.
Richard Bissell. Richard?
I'm sorry. Hello?
That sounds
Yes.
good. We can hear you now.
Question about recycling versus the household waste. How are we charged by Waste Management, and what kind of revenue do we get versus on the recycling side versus the solid waste side, if we get any revenue at all? And how does that, how do we recognize what the value of doing any recycling or more or less recycling would be relative to the regular household trash?
So currently we pay to haul the recycling off, and we also have a processing cost because it has to be sorted out. I think the revenue, I would characterize it as minimal. So it really is just us contributing to doing our part to recycle. I think hopefully there are some better ways to recycle, and I'd love to continue our discussions with Waste Management to see if we can't evolve our system into something more productive. You know, I mean, we've all probably experienced going down there, and we can't get more than the 2 recycle bins that we've got, and we can continue to try to harp on folks about, please fold your boxes, but some people still don't, and therefore the amount that we can haul out is reduced because volume is how that's done. So I hope I've answered your questions. You know, part of what we've included here is putting a roof up for recycling. That's out on the last year of this, and the intent in my mind is hopefully we could evolve into having a 40 or 50 yard bin of mixed recycling, and we keep it dry. I think our cardboard is the greatest thing, because we are a community that we receive so much by shipping. We generate a lot of cardboard, and I'd love to see that be useful. When it gets wet, it's not. So, not that it is now, but we don't get as much probably put in there because the capacity of those bins is so much smaller than if we had a large one and people could use that. So I hope that answered your question.
Kathy Kinnear.
Hi, thank you, Bill. It somewhat follows up with this point that was just made, or you just made, about the large cardboard. I see it all the time when I go people get their big TV boxes and they don't break them down and everything else. I think it goes to if there was better control at the gate. If the person actually looked at a load and said, you know, you have to break down your cardboard and monitored it. But, you know, it just doesn't happen. It's lackadaisical and anybody can walk in and pretty much do anything. Well, I don't know. I shouldn't say that. That's not fair. But I think people take advantage. Let me put it that way. I think residents can take advantage of the system and not do their part. So I hope you make that point in these public meetings. What can I do to keep our costs down? And have one handout, what we all can do to keep our costs down. So thank you.
Christie, anybody else?
I have no more hands.
All right, I appreciate those comments. We all have to, it is a process of improvement, and we're making improvements as we go and just on a path to getting better and better. Director Grace, how about your chiming in on this?
I would just say thank you, Bill, for the presentation. That's a lot of good information. We look forward to seeing this at the Finance Committee. I think it's especially important to understand the Prop 218 requirements. This is not a free market where we can go out and charge whatever we want. We are restricted to charge what is required to operate the system. So I think it's especially important to emphasize that. And just anecdotally, I mean, anybody that has ever lived outside the gate and lived under CR&R or waste management has to recognize that certainly $16 a month is a bargain, but even $31 a month is typical of what you would pay. So I think this is good to bring us into the current state of affairs as it relates to what we need to operate solid waste. So I appreciate this effort.
Thank you, sir. Director Jensen.
I have nothing.
Thank you, sir. Director Quinn.
I have no comment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I have no comments. May I entertain a motion from the board?
I move the board of directors direct staff to undertake public outreach in advance of the June 13th, 2021 board meeting, incorporating appropriate changes into the May 2021 preliminary draft solid waste rate study for board consideration.
Second.
Motion by Quinn, second by Grace. Ms. McEwen.
Director Grace,
Aye.
Director Jensen,
Aye.
Director Quinn,
Aye.
President Han.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. The staff is so directed.
Thank you.
Item 9 is information and discussion items, and we're on board comments alphabetically and by no other means. Director Grace, the floor is yours.
Didn't really have anything additional to add at this time, sir.
Thank you, sir. Director Jensen, the floor is yours.
I have no comments.
Thank you, sir. Director Quinn.
I'd like to circle back to what Kathy Kinnear first pointed out regarding the management of the transfer station. There are times of day when it's double staffed. You know, somebody is scraping up the green waste and putting it into the greater and greater pile, and someone is probably in the shack watching people rolling in. There are other times when somebody is sitting on the in the control seat of the excavator and watching things come in. And I agree that with Kathy that we're probably going to be better off stopping somebody at the gate and saying, wait a minute, that stuff cannot go in here, rather than assuming that we're going to catch the perpetrator on tape and submit a administrative citation. I grant you that staffing is kind of a tough deal nowadays, but not much is really being accomplished by sitting in the cab of the excavator, watching it going through. A little bit more perambulating around, both at the green waste area and down by the household area, would just show a little bit more concern from the point of view of the CSD as to how serious we think this is.
Director Quinn, you're muted.
I think you might have been finished.
I finished.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, Christy, for that. I would just add this. The best any human can do is try to be better tomorrow than we were today. And those are my comments. Staff reports, item Bravo. I is department head reports, and the first up is finance report, Mr. Jones.
Thank you, President Hahn. The item before you is the finance activity report for period 9 or the month of March. I do not have anything significant to point out, but I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Comments from the public, Ms. McEwen?
None.
Director Grace?
No comments. Thank you, Hamid.
Director Jensen?
I have no comments.
Director Quinn?
Nothing, fine job as usual.
Agree with that. Right, item number 2 is a public works report.
Mr. President, members of the board, we have presented the report. We stand available to answer any questions you may have.
I don't see anyone's hand up in public. Director Grace?
Nothing for me, sir.
Director Jensen?
I have nothing.
Director Quinn?
I have a couple of things. It was brought to my attention that there are some areas, despite the fact that we have a drought going on, pretty significant drought, there are areas in the drainage easements, especially in the, I guess you call it the Middle Valley, the area east of Dart Drive, where there's standing water. And I'm just wondering if we have any responsibility as far as mosquito abatement is concerned, or would we simply, I'm sure we'd like to have people simply throwing mosquito dunks into these sloughs and let the public take care of the problem, but do we have any provision for doing it ourselves, first of all?
I would say we have done that even in my tenure here. So, depending upon the severity and so on, I think Will handled that, didn't you?
Yeah, we're constantly throwing dunks in standing water. It's never ending battle out here, mosquitoes. And yeah, you may not see it, but we're throwing them in all over the place constantly.
Okay, thank you. The other thing I had was, could we have an update on the prospective plan to address road signage? It was brought to my attention that sometimes directional signs, not necessarily street signs, but directional signs become damaged. They even might disappear. And is there some sort of a plan to get them back in order? Also, that brings to mind my continuing thought that we all residents here have a responsibility. We can step up. If a sign looks like it's getting really cattywampus and all it takes is a screw or a small bolt to get the sign working right, I really don't think that either the chief's department or Public Works is going to come down and rain all over somebody because they made a sign operable. So I'd just like to hear, we did a very good plan on replacement of the mailboxes. It was set out in advance boom, boom, boom. It seems to be going very well. I don't get around the valley that much, but when I see a whole bank of brand new mailboxes with new roofs and that kind of thing, I'm very pleased that it's gone as well as it has. And I would like to know that we are going to make this kind of progress on street signs and directional signs.
I would ask Daniel to chime in, please, and update everybody on the plan.
Yeah, we're actually ordering a lot of advisory signs. We just did our regulatory sign replacement. All the speed limit signs and regulatory signs have been updated and replaced. Most of the advisory signs in the lower valley are getting replaced probably in the next month or so. For the directional signs, I'm not sure which ones you're referring to. I just kind of need to be made aware of them and we can take care of them.
Very good, thank you.
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Quinn, by directional signs, are we talking about the street name signs?
No, the one that was pointed out to me was actually, I think I mischaracterized it. I think it was some sort of a sign that indicated the end of the street running into a T intersection. And, you know, I don't quite know why we'd have something like that as opposed to simply a stop sign, but apparently there was one at some point. And I believe this was on San Juan approaching Cumberland, but I may be wrong on my recollection of that point.
Thank you. Would you look at that, Daniel?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. That ends Public Works report, Public Safety report. Chief Malinen.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board. You have my April 21 Public Safety Staff Report. A few things to report. There is a sergeant recruitment process in process. Sergeant Pierce has officially retired, and so we have now posted that position, hoping to get some good applicants for that position. In the meantime, we have promoted an interim sergeant to fulfill his role, and that is our newest Sergeant Dane Pierce. One incident of interest to discuss or to mention to you, and the reason I bring this one up is not because it was significant because of the seriousness of the crime, but rather the response that came into the valley. So a Bear Valley officer was dispatched to the tennis courts near the golf course and country club. And he walked up to the bathrooms. There were two subjects inside. He could tell between their discussion that it was about drugs. He called for backup. They walked out. He called for one unit to back them up. They walked out. They were very elusive. He could see a drug paraphernalia in plain view. So he called for another backup because by this time he's taken two people into custody. He's detaining two suspicious individuals that were and it was a justifiable reason to call backup, and he got a couple of stallion units, I think, and so those two individuals were booked for being under the influence of methamphetamine and possession of a dangerous weapon and booked into jail. And then there was another one notable that I didn't list in this report that the general manager thought was interesting, and so did I. And I'll make it short if I can. I worked patrol about a week ago. Worked a patrol shift, a night shift, and at about midnight, the stallion units, a stallion officer had pulled over a vehicle, and it was kind of an older vehicle, beat up with a small travel trailer. And as he approached the vehicle, he saw drugs in plain view and a weapon, a knife in plain view. So he kind of backed up and called for backup. So I went out to help him. He detained the subjects inside, and so he needed help with them, plus searching the rest of the vehicle. And the occupants were, there was 3 of them. One was on parole. So he had the dangerous weapon, he had the narcotics, they were under the influence as well. And he found evidence, we later found evidence of the manufacturing of honey oil. If anybody's interested, I'll tell you what that is. But none of the subjects were from Stein Springs. And so it got me to wondering, you know, why are they here? How did they get all the way there? They were from out of state, actually. So I asked one of them, what are you doing here? And he said, we heard about a place called Bear Valley Springs and we were headed there, but we didn't live there, so they wouldn't let us in. So we came to Stein Springs. So interesting, you know, it just, I think it goes towards the value of our gate and what it does as a crime deterrent in Bear Valley. So very happy with that. Also, I'd like to mention that last month, Director Jensen had asked me about vehicles being towed by after a person is arrested and cited on a traffic misdemeanor of either not having a license or their license is suspended. There were 3 cases. In 2 cases, the vehicle was turned over to a responsible driver because the driver was cited for not having a driver's license. On the 3rd one, the vehicle was impounded because the driver was driving on a suspended license. So that's pretty consistent with the direction that I've given my officers, is that if you're driving on a suspended license, your vehicle is going to be impounded. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
President, if I might real
Yes.
quickly, and it may be all me, but I thought, Chief, you identified the interim sergeant as Pierce, and it's Officer
Oh.
Hurst.
My mistake. Yes, Officer Dane Hurst. I still have Officer Pierce on the brain. It's Officer Dane Hurst. Sorry about that. Thank you, Bill.
Okay, appreciate that. Ms. McEwen from the public.
Kathy Kinnear.
Thank you. Chief, just a technical question. It relates to those 2 reports as well as the incident that the very unfortunate traffic incident that happened this past week by the Whiting Center. And I happened to be at the Whiting Center at the association candidate night when a bicyclist ran through the stop sign at Jacaranda and T-boned or hit a car and subsequently had to be airlifted out. And I noted several people on Facebook said, oh, look at all these, you know, sheriff cars. We don't need PD. But I think I'm pretty sure for the record, the Bear Valley police officer on duty was the first to the scene. And then it sounded like it's protocol under certain circumstances that we call for backup. And for Bear Valley, our backup is a mutual aid agreement with either Stallion or the Sheriff's Department. Is that correct?
Yes, you're correct on that, Kathy. Our mutual aid in Bear Valley is Stallion Springs, the Kern County Sheriff's Office, and yeah, the other night or the other afternoon, our officer was the first one on scene. He was there within about a minute, actually. And then Stallion Springs did back us up. They cut off traffic on to clear Bear Valley Road for the emergency response. And it's very common. And as I mentioned about my response to Stallion Springs' request to help with their incident the other night, this is something that happens nearly daily, where we are going to help them and they are going to help us. This happens with all the agencies, including the Highway Patrol. We'll go respond to Golden Hills, and we have to assist the Highway Patrol or the Kern County Sheriff's Office in the Golden Hills area. We don't go too much past there unless it's a very, very, a major thing, and we are being asked to go. But yes, it's very common, Kathy, and again, it happens almost daily.
Well, thank you. I think, Bill, if I might, I'm not sure the general public or the Bear Valley residents, or at least some on social media, understand what these mutual aid agreements are. I don't know that it would stop some of their complaints, but I do think it's important to get factual information out. And I haven't subsequently checked, maybe Megan has, and I hasn't seen it, but I do think this type of information is important to share. So thank you. And thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
It's also my understanding that now acting Sergeant Dane Hurst is one of the candidates for BVSA, and he fled immediately and assisted Officer Arabello. So that was pretty cool too. All right, where are we? Back to public. Ms. McEwen.
Jiva?
Hello, thank you. 3 questions. The first incident you mentioned at the tennis court restrooms, were they residents?
Yes.
Okay, and then the second incident, you said, oh, they were on their way to Bear Valley, but they couldn't get in because of the gate. Did you find out why or how they heard about Bear Valley and why that was a point of interest for them to end up at?
I hadn't, Jiva's. It just made me curious how these people ended up in the area. I assumed by the way he answered the question that he had heard about it from a relative or something like that, and that it was a very cool place.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it wasn't like he, you know, I think these were campers.
Oh,
They go around the country and just sleep in their RV. And so I think it could have been our campgrounds that they heard of, maybe.
okay, thank you on that. And then the third, I know you've been working hard to get another officer. And as we all hear on the news, so many are retiring elsewhere, especially in the unappreciated areas or for their service and whatnot. Are you finding it any easier to find more qualified officers?
It is a challenge, Jiva. But it is, I'm convinced that it's shared by chiefs and sheriffs all over the state and possibly the country. I don't know, but I recently attended the California Police Chiefs Association. There was an online seminar, and it was discussed on the difficulty in hiring and finding and hiring qualified applicants. So it's universally shared. And the challenge for Bear Valley is that because we have such a small staffing, we really can't. I say we can't. I want to hire experienced officers. I want to hire experienced officers that come from departments where they already have years on, and because we often operate alone without any partners other than our, the sheriff's office or the Stallion Springs. So yes, it's an ongoing challenge, and again, I'm interested in qualified officers that have clean records, clean pasts, that want to work in such a great community. It's a big selling point. So yes, it's difficult.
But thank you. I agree with that. And I was hoping that we could find some more now that they're leaving other areas. Thank you, Chief, for all your work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jiva. We'll go to the board. Director Gray's comments on the public safety report.
Chief, this isn't a comment on the report per se, but just expanding the discussion of mutual aid. Can you help us understand in a typical, or maybe you have this data, but in an incident where, for example, Kern County Sheriff's Department would respond, what is their typical response time and where are they coming from to serve as a support for your team?
Yeah, Director Grace, that's a good question. The Kern County Sheriff's Office is obviously facing a staffing crisis, the same as many other departments. So much so that at one time, and when I worked there, the Golden Hills station actually had designated deputies for that station. The Mojave station had designated deputies for that station, the same with Roseman. They've since gone to sort of a sectional response plan where those deputies are now designated as East Kern, and they go everywhere. So very often they will get pulled down into the lower desert area where crime is much higher. And so their response times can be, over an hour. But, that's just the way it is. That's why you so often see Stallion Springs in Bear Valley, and why Stallion Springs residents often so frequently see Bear Valley officers there. We sort of take care of each other. In years past, you saw a better response from the sheriff's office in Bear Valley. We found that lately we often hear them at least starting to back us up from the Mojave area, and we take that into account. I mean, if we realize that we're probably going to have this problem solved before they get here, we'll just stop them from doing that, because they have calls pending down there. So it's tricky.
Tricky to say the least, for sure. Well, thank you for everything you do. We sure appreciate you, and it's been a challenging and tumultuous couple of weeks here, but we very much appreciate you.
Thank you, Director Grace.
Thank you, sir. Director Jensen.
Yeah, just a few things, Chief. I've come into the gate a few times, and I've noticed accidents at the gate where people run into the RFID arm, and I was wondering if you could speak to how often that happens, and basically what's causing this.
Sure. If I could graph the number of times it's happened, I would venture to get that, though I haven't, but I venture to guess that it has decreased, and I knew it would, or I hoped it would over time, because people get used to the RFID gate. It still happens probably once a month, and it's usually the same reason, either following too close or going over 10 miles an hour, the speed, the recommended speed out there. So you see them on video, and they all look very similar. They're right behind a vehicle, they're following really closely. The lead vehicle goes, and the second vehicle just goes right in behind them, and the gate doesn't catch the RFID, doesn't read it, and it goes down, and it pops the gate off.
Do you think a speed bump would be helpful there?
Well, I think it could, it would have to be a portable one that could be removed for snow plows. But, here's the thing, I think let me see if I get these numbers right. On average, there's 3,500 vehicles coming in the gate every day and 3,500 going out. Approximately 2,000 of them go through the visitor lane, and about 1,500 through the RFID lane. I'm hard pressed to put a speed bump for every single resident in the RFID lane to have to go over, because less than 1% is going to hit that gate. So it is a breakaway gate. It does take staff time to go down and put it back. You see what it does to the lights. That's not good. We issue, administrative citations. We've issued those to residents who violate the speed limit or follow too close. But I'm not sure about a speed bump, honestly, when like I said, making 99% of the residents have to go over that thing for the small fraction that might slow down because of it.
Is that how damages are recompensed, through administrative citations to pay for the damages?
Yes.
All right. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about, I wanted to get back to that March 24th missing girl incident on Skyline. Mm-hmm. I know you previously said at the last meeting you were actually the one on duty that evening, yes?
Yes.
Now, is that to say you were physically in Bear Valley that evening?
Yes, I was right here at the office. Yeah.
Okay. And the call came in. What was the first thing you did?
Well, first thing I did was got on the phone. Well, first I called the reporting party, got the details of what was occurring. Then I got on the phone and got resources here. Helicopter, Stallion Springs deputies, sheriff's deputies started from Mojave, and then I went to the scene.
Okay. I got the log from that incident, and it took 30 minutes from the time that the call came in from the reporting party until it looked like any action was taken at all, which was you asking for the helicopter. So wondering what happened in those 30 minutes.
No way. I was sitting right here at 11:40 p.m. I got the call, immediately got on the phone with the girl's mother, got all the information from her, which might have taken 15 minutes. I'm very detailed, and I wanted every detail I could get on everything that we were up against. Immediately called for the helicopter. So I don't know why the log would say that.
Well, the log said the call came in at 11:22, and then you didn't request the helicopter until 11:54.
I have no idea. I looked at the clock when I get dispatched, and it was like around 11:40.
Okay.
So I don't know. I don't have access to the log right now, so I would have to review that.
Okay. So there wasn't someone else on call that evening that was supposed to go to this call?
No, I was on duty.
Okay. How does that work when officers are on call? Do the calls come to you and then you decide whether someone's going to respond or not, or what?
No, the communication center knows the criteria, which is, in progress calls, and they make the call of whether to call out the officer.
Okay. How often does that happen, that we have on-call officers?
Pretty frequently.
Okay. Do you know how many sheriffs responded to this missing person call?
No, I don't, and I don't even believe they made it here, because they were responding from the desert, and she was found pretty quickly. So I don't know that they made it to Bear Valley or not. I don't believe they did.
Okay. And how many stallion units responded?
2.
Do you know what they did when they responded?
Began searching.
Okay. When did you make contact with the family of the missing person? Personal contact.
Within 20, 30 minutes. I mean, I was, I don't know. I was searching, coordinating the helicopter, showing them where to go. So yes.
Okay. Do you ever, in the course of your work, retrieve dispatch logs from dispatch to look at times, and you're writing a report and you want to confirm times, things like that?
Very seldom.
Very seldom.
Yes.
Okay.
We call. I'll call the communication center and ask them that kind of information, but I won't request a formal log.
You don't ask for printed logs to attach to reports?
Not on every incident, no.
No, not on every incident, but you've routinely done that in the past?
I wouldn't say routinely.
Okay. So how hard is it to get a copy of a log from dispatch? Is it pretty simple?
How hard is it?
Yeah.
Request a log and you're sent a log.
And how long does that usually take?
It can vary depending upon how busy the supervisor is.
Okay. On your longest time, how long do you think it would take to get it for you?
I couldn't tell you. Hours.
Hours. Okay. I've routinely gotten them before in minutes when I need one.
I've gotten one in minutes.
Okay. All right. So 14 days would probably be too long.
14 days would be too long. What do you mean?
To ask for a log and then not get it.
I don't know. I've never had to wait 14 days.
Okay. Well, I waited more than 14 days. I requested this log through management, and I waited a week. I didn't get a response. I requested it again. I waited another 3 or 4 days. And then I got a response that said, you don't have the log. So I responded again. Does that mean you don't have the log, or you've asked for it and you just haven't gotten it yet? And then I waited another 3 or 4 days, and I said, and I was told, you're going to have to get the log from the sheriff's department. This is a pretty simple document to retrieve and to obtain. Even for the public, it's a public document. I had to go through the sheriff's department and through Stallion Springs to get a copy of this log when I asked management for it. And I was basically stonewalled 3 or 4 times, told that you don't have it, you can't get it, you got to get it from someone else. And it's just so frustrating, because this is like the 3rd missing person / lost person incident we've had this year that's kind of been bungled. We had the lost hiker that for some reason we ceded responsibility to KCSO and to the BVSA ranger. And then we had a second one where one of our good citizens here in Bear Valley came across a lost child that he collected and called the police, and the police, for whatever reason, said, oh no, you go ahead and drive the kid around and try to find where the kid lives. I'm going to go do something else. And then we have this one that I just don't understand why it took 30 minutes from the time the call came in until something was done.
It wasn't, and I haven't seen that log, but if those things are sometimes difficult to read.
I've been reading them for 24 years. I'm very
good. There's no way it took that long.
Okay. Well, regardless, the first people that made contact with the family was Stallion Springs PD, and then they go and search the family's house. I would think that our police department would be doing that. They should be the first on scene to contact a family in this incident, and that didn't happen.
Well, you would think so. And oftentimes when I'm used to getting second guessed by those that are not on scene, and those are dynamic situations. And, I stand by the way all of those were handled, except for the one that you're talking about. And I believe that I gave you my best explanation as to that, the one with the child, that I possibly could. So you already have that information. I don't know what you called them bungled. That is absolutely not a term I would use whatsoever.
Well, I guess we'll have to agree to disagree on that. I mean,
I guess so. And just so you know, I have handled probably hundreds of missing persons calls. I was the lieutenant in charge of the sheriff's search and rescue unit, where I managed 500 search and rescue volunteers all over the county. I've been to the lost persons school that all the search and rescuers go to, including the management of the search function, which is what managers go to. So I'm pretty familiar with how to handle a missing persons case, a lost person's case. And bungled is absolutely not a term I would use.
Well, I wish all of that training and experience was actually showing in the incidents that we're seeing here. But between that and, I mean, if I look at this activity, 30 traffic stops in a month, that's 1 a day, 12 tickets in a month. I don't know what they're doing.
Is that a question, sir?
No, it's more of a statement. Maybe you can address that low activity. I mean, is it just that we don't need that much policing here, or is it just that they're doing other things?
They're conducting traffic enforcement. They're answering calls for service. They're looking for on-site activity. They're making community contacts. They're doing police work.
Okay. That's it. I have nothing else. Thank you.
Director Quinn.
No questions. Thank you, Chief.
Welcome.
Chief, you have my full support. The police department here in Bear Valley has my full support. I resent that a board member is calling successful outcomes of missing persons bungled. That's totally false. And you're going to nitpick 30 minutes on a logbook to call it bungled. That's you're just looking for things. We all know you ran, Charles, to end the police department, but you will never, ever have support from me with that ticky-tack crap.
There's nothing ticky-tack.
We're moving on to the general counsel report.
Or me, sir, for that matter.
Tack about 30 minutes, sir.
No way.
General counsel report.
Thank you, President Hahn. Just briefly, you directed our office to initiate potential renewal of the grazing lease with Milano. We have engaged a firm to look at the valuation of the lease for a possible extension. And I had a very good discussion with Mr. Milano. If you want to learn about grazing operations, he is definitely the source to do it. Very interesting person. And got some interesting facts about his lease, but I don't expect that we would need to make significant revisions to the lease. I think he's generally comfortable. I'm comfortable with the provisions. It's really at this point just determining the value for the board going forward to make sure that we're within a market range. And there are certainly lots of factors that factor into those kind of leases too. And that's what was very interesting in my discussion with him, raising from fence repairs to lack of water on our site. So there'll be some interesting things for the appraiser to look at. So I would expect that to come back probably in July, I'm hoping. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a hand up in the public, but this is for general counsel report. Ms. McEwen?
That hand was came up earlier, so I'll go ahead and Kathy Kinnear.
I could direct this question to Dawn. I felt the last exchange between Mr. Jensen and the chief was inappropriate. I felt that it was harassment. If he may have a very valid comments, but I think Mr. Malinen should sit down with both of them in his office, that this is not appropriate for a board meeting. And I suppose Mr. Jensen's objective is to try to frustrate the chief to the point where he leaves. But I strongly hope the chief stays, and Mr. Malinen, you handle Mr. Jensen in a more appropriate manner, because there are no facts out there, there are accusations.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. This is about the general counsel report. Thank you, though.
Well, Ms. Dawn can certainly give a report about this behavior.
Right. Moving on. I don't see any other hands, and so Director Grace.
I don't have anything else to say, Mr. President. I just echo everything you said. I'm in full support of the chief. I am in full support of a strong and solid and growing Bear Valley PD.
Thank you. Director Jensen, general counsel report.
I have nothing.
Director Quinn.
I have nothing. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Davis. Appreciate the report. General manager report, Mr. Malinen.
Mr. President, members of the board, first item, just a COVID update in Kern County. We remain in the orange tier while our test positivity and our lowest quartile are eligible to get us into what would be the yellow tier and a more relaxed set of regulations. The case rate is not. And so until that third metric gets into the appropriate level, we'll remain in orange. We await still what the governor may announce, hopefully mid-June, on some relaxing statewide on some of the restrictions we've all lived under. The tree grant, I know there was some conversation about that at the beginning of the meeting, but we were also contacted by the Chavez Conservation Corps and have given them the authority to include Bear Valley in a fuel reduction grant that they're making to CAL FIRE. That would include Stallion and Golden Hills and some others. Their plan is to address common areas or easements and things. So, some of the discussion regarding road right-of-ways might be in their scope if they're successful. So certainly the first thing is to make an application and hopefully have a strong application. But if they are successful, we're hopeful that they might be a part of continuing to improve here in Bear Valley Springs. We are, I think, as you know, the Tehachapi Cummings County Water District had the ordinance. I think we talked about it a month or so ago for water priority that was adopted by them. We also are working with the district and our fellow agencies in the Regional Urban Water Management Plan to have their consultant prepare our conservation ordinance as drought conditions seem imminent. And so we would all have a fairly consistent ordinance. So we're doing that kind of in cooperation in conjunction with our partners there. Real quick heads up or kudos to Hamid and Perla Fichter, who continued our applications for CARES Act funding and secured an additional $57,000 from that program for us, so that we are in excess of $150,000 that we have been approved for. The fencing project on our north side, hopefully people have seen it and find it as straight as I can imagine, and a very fine job. So to Larry and his crew, and we appreciate the association's support because, as you know, we are sharing the costs of that fencing. We're going to be given maybe a quick update on the street signs. It really appears we're going to be going with what would be a brown and a white, not a yellow, if only because it may not be consistent or compliant with the traffic safety manual. So we wanted to give you a quick update on that. We've got a couple of these reflective signs, and they are some. Wells 31 and 32, those are the potable wells that we're rehabilitating. 32 is pretty much done. 31, pardon me, is in progress. But again, in the next month or so, they should both be online. And then lastly, I know this was a topic somewhat, AB 339 is a bill that would mandate that local governments provide input not only in person but via phone and or online. And what that would mean when we come out of all the COVID restrictions as we get back into in-person meetings. So that bill is pending, but CSDs have been exempted from that, which again, it would have been a mandate, and as far as I know, an unfunded mandate. And so as we return to in-person, it will be seemingly in person, but not mandated to include other forms of communications. And with that, Mr. President, members, I'll stand for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Malinen. No hands up. Just snuck it in, Jiva. Ms. McEwen.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Bill, I forgot to mention earlier, a friend reminded me that the CAL FIRE dying tree removal included dying trees. And I know we talked about the dead trees being chipped or being removed or whatever, and that being available, but the dying trees still have active bark beetle activity or larvae. So do you know how the foresters are handling that? So it's either being covered or protected, however they're supposed to do the tarp to kill them, or being completely removed and not being necessarily chipped for, use of the community. So that was my question. Thank you, Bill.
I don't have a specific answer for that, but I'm writing it down so we can find out.
I'm sure he'll be back to you then, Jiva. To the board, Director Grace.
Nothing for me, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Director Shenson.
No question, sir.
Thank you, sir. Director Quinn.
Good report as usual, Bill. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And good report. Item 10, future agenda items. Ms. McEwen.
You have them listed in front of you, and we did not have anything to add. We'll just change the proposed dates of the budget study sessions.
Great. Right. That concludes our business. I wish everyone well. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Everybody have a good evening.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Good night.